Ah oui, trop sympa, merci. Waouh, c'est hyper impressionnant, non? On fait un peu comme... ça marche. Impressionnant. Ah, surtout pas. Surtout pas.
D'accord.
Surtout pas. Moi, je déteste être seule. Oui, oui, vas-y.
Ça, c'est Givaudan.
Ça,
Je
c'est
te
Givaudan.
rassure, c'est pour ça. Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
See some rituals.
Yes, I think they are designed to,
Capture.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
The phone.
I turned mine off.
J'avais en train de compter pour savoir combien de petites touches elles font.
Ah oui, c'est ça.
Okay.
Great, thank you. What? 29? Okay. Ooh, somebody was tall. Okay, good afternoon, and thank you all for coming. For those of you who don't know me yet, I'm Marin. I'm the Director of Content and Consultant with Excensional, which is a website dedicated to niche perfumery, also linked to Exence. And now, today, we're going to talk about the new vintage movement and when Gen Z rediscovers heritage brands. That's the name of our workshop here, because we've noticed that there's really been a trend in this generation having an affinity with brands that have a true heritage, that have a history. And so over the past few months, Arnaud here, that I will introduce, we've talked about how this was a big trend. And then we thought, well, why don't we do a workshop on this and bring together some brands that can really speak to this trend. So Arnaud Guggenbuhl, he's the head of global marketing, I have to read his title, Global Marketing Insight and Image for Fine Fragrance at Givaudan. You've probably recognized him because he always comes to Exence, and he's a great friend of Exence. Sitting next to Arnaud, I have Amélie Huynh, who is the CEO of the Maison d'Orsay. This is a 200-year-old house that she will tell you about the path to bringing it into the contemporary times. And then next to Amélie, we have Louise Farina of Farina 1709. Louise is the 9th generation of a brand that is 300 years old. Then at the end, and she'll tell you all about her brand, and then at the end I have Nicola Pozzani, who is a creative director and education specialist who works both with Farina and with Floris. So 2 heritage brands. So I'm going to pass the baton to Arnaud, and we'll get started. So we'll talk a little bit about the trend, then everyone will talk about their brand, and then we'll also have some fragrances for all of you to smell. And then at the end, if we have time, we'll go on to some questions, okay?
Thank you, Karen. So, just are we sure that this is working? Because
the green?
when I click, nothing happens. Yes, now it works. No? Hello?
Oh,
sorry, I need.
The clicker's not working.
Yeah, sorry. It seems that it doesn't work.
Oh, voila. Magic. It's magic.
Okay, now it works. So sorry for that. So yes, as Karen was saying, it was super interesting for us to touch this subject about vintage and about also how nostalgia can be a true asset for brands, you know, to play on at the moment, because particularly we are seeing a rising popularity of heritage brands, but also from an olfactive point of view, and this is also something that we will touch during this talk, we can really see that something can be very inspiring for the Gen Z when we look at the past, because the past can be the new future. And in fact, the whole the whole reflection started because when we were looking the best-selling perfumes in the world, this is prestige, but it's really interesting to see that you really have some iconics that are still selling super well. So of course, you know, you can say, yes, but you know, they touch some generation, so it's logical that they are still there. They were icons for a long time. However, we know that, you know, the people that bought, for example, Chanel No. 5 or Shalimar when they were young, you know, at certain points, if you want to still be top ranked, you need to renew your target. So that means that because these fragrances are still selling super well, that means that the youngest one also are attracted by this in fact, iconic fragrances. And we discovered that for the young one, wearing this type of fragrance, it's like wearing a niche perfume. It's becoming a counter-cultural statement. It's very interesting because for them, they are linking this super, I would say, vintage type of prestige fragrances with the old money movement, you know, really thinking that, in fact, for them, wearing these fragrances is something that makes them unique, very differentiating, and with these fragrances, they are touching the real world of luxury. The thing that is also very interesting is that we know that the Gen Z, this generation, is really living a moment that we are calling positive nostalgia. We all know that nostalgia is a very, very powerful bridge between memory and modernity. And the funny thing is that Gen Z, they love to reinvent the past. So here you have a picture of a young Gen Z girl, you know, redesigning her Apple Watch as a Tamagotchi. So I don't know if some of you in the room had a Tamagotchi when they were younger, but at least you can see how, in fact, by mix-matching the most modern technology with something that is old-fashioned, you can really remix, evolve, and make things that is appealing again, very authentic, and at the same time, very modern and very contemporary. So, in fact, we are seeing that this generation, they are living a type of nostalgia that is called anemoia. Anemoia means a nostalgic sense of longing for a past you yourself have never lived. So it's really the nostalgia of the good old day. It's really crazy to see that in France, 59% of the Gen Z would have liked to live in another period or another decade. So of course, we all know that we are living in a world that is quite dramatic, you know, with a lot of turmoil. But it's really interesting also to see that this notion of the past that can bring some spark into the present is something that is very interesting and important for this generation. And you can see either in China, in France, or in the US, a lot of young consumers prefer movies and series set in the past. The most famous pop star of the moment, you know, Benson Boone, Sabrina Carpenter, they are all using this kind of nostalgic vibe to really please the younger generation. So we can say that we are really living at the moment into a time machine. 48% of the youngest one in France are attached or collect things of their childhood. It's 61% in China, 77% in the US. So it's absolutely interesting to see that this notion of bringing them joy thanks to the past, thanks to their childhood, or thanks even to a period of time that they haven't lived in is something very important, because it's focusing on simplicity, it's focusing on youth, it's focusing on pop culture. In fact, it's all about good memories, it's all about simplicity, it's all about something that resonates from an experiential point of view at the deep heart of what they would love to, in fact, live nowadays. It's really something that is absolutely for them, I would say, a kind of roller coaster of happiness that can be brought to them back. And we saw that particularly in China, and this is very interesting for the niche market, because we know that 63% of the youngest in China think their generation is nostalgic, and we even saw this notion of the craving for the beauty of economic upswing. People are remembering, you know, the Y2K areas, when in fact it was the crazy growth in China. At the moment, we know that even if the figures are not official, the youngest ones are struggling nowadays to find jobs. They are struggling also to consume the way they were consuming, and they want to have this simplicity and the easy moments that they were living in during the 1990s or the 2000 years. You know, they are dreaming to live back this type of years. So it's the reason why a lot of brands are now playing with what we are calling retro marketing. We know that 84% of the youngest one in the US think their generation is nostalgic. And if you see how Vuitton was able to relaunch the collaboration with Murakami, mix matching the past with the present with Zendaya, that is perhaps one of the most appealing Gen Z icon at the moment, playing with the vibe of New York and adding this sparkling, joyful things and images, you can really understand what does it mean, you know, playing positive nostalgia. When it comes to fragrances, in fact, it's super interesting to see that nostalgia can also help us to create. We run a study in France, US, and China, where we were asking consumers what are the ingredients that are the most linked to your childhood. And when you are looking, they were talking about milk, peach, pear, raspberry, strawberry. Funny enough, when you are looking some of the best sellers of the brand at the moment that have just been released, they are playing on these ingredients. Is it an hazard? Is it because we are visionary? I don't know. But at least it shows, you know, that there is something very interesting, is that when you are able to evoke these ingredients while turning them into something very modern, because, and you can talk about that, but the peach that was used, you know, for Maison d'Orsay, it's not at all a classical old-fashioned peach, but, you know, by just having a little touch of something that can be comforting because it reminds them their childhood is a very, very interesting way to create and to create olfactive icons for the future. And when it comes to brands, I think that we have great panelists that are able to tell us also how they are able to, in fact, play on this retro marketing, heritage, the notion of the past to project it into a future. And please, the stage is yours to explain how you are doing with Farina.
So, is it on? Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, so Louise is going to start by talking about her brand, and this might be a great moment to start passing around the first fragrance.
Yes. So, yes, my name is Louise Farina. I'm working at our family business in 9th generation. It's actually the world's oldest perfume house and the inventors of the original eau de cologne, which you will smell very soon because it will be distributed now. And as I'm only 26 years old and this company is 316 years old, I am all the time trying to balance the beauty of the past with the time we're living in today, but also, of course, for the future. And to me, Arnaud, it's beautiful what you just mentioned, because it's exactly that what we are experiencing. The other day, we just launched our new collection, and there were many young men dressed very cool in our old, very, I would say, classic-looking shop. And people, like our employees, they were like, what are these like 18-year-old boys doing here? What are they looking for? But they are fascinated by the fragrance that was worn by Sisi, which is such a contrast. And I do believe that we need, at the moment, the link to the past to create trust. Because people, and especially the young people, they spend so much time in social media. They have all the negative news. They have all of the fake news. You see pictures you can't believe. You hear stories where then the next day you see they are not true. So I think when they experience a brand like us, where there is a past of 300 years continuous history, and also there's a family behind that represents it, it's creating a lot of trust, also for the expertise. Because also in the fragrance world, how many brands are popping up nowadays? People, they don't know. You can't hear me? Now it's better. Now I hear myself also. People, they don't know what to trust, also in terms of pricing. I mean, the whole dupe situation. You buy things for 400 euros. Someone says this is the perfect quality. Another one says you don't need that. You buy it for 20 euro. There, how can the consumer know? And I think this is where heritage helps us to prove also that we have the expertise and we provide a certain quality, and also for the consumer, in a way, this justifies the price we are taking. And I wanted to give you a quick view in how we created the brand during the last 2 years that I'm working in it. So everything we are doing for the future, we are getting inspired by the past. It's like our tradition is our most valuable resource. So, for example, when I started working in the company, the first thing all the generations do, my father said, he did exactly the same. I wanted to do a big rebranding and wanted to make it all very contemporary, more modern looking. But I didn't do a market study. I went into the archives and I looked at the bottle shapes 200 years ago. I looked at the colors the last 300 years. The tulip you see in our logo, it was there in many different forms and shapes. So I collected the best things from the past to make sure it fits into the modern world on the one hand, and at the same time we don't lose track to our identity. And the brief we always had was that we said the bottle has to of course be liked by the modern consumer, but at the same time you need to feel that it's exactly the same bottle that Sisi or Napoleon Bonaparte, Queen Victoria had in their hand, which was quite a challenge, but that's what you see here is the result, and what you smell. That's something very special about our company as well. It's exactly the same scent that is carried in those bottles for the last 300 years. So for me it was clear with the original scent we're not doing a big recreation. We didn't want to change the formula, because this is a classic and it's something really people, they wear since 300 years. And today when I look in your faces, a lot of people, when they start smelling the eau de cologne because of the citrus, they start smiling, and that's beautiful, even though now we are in a much more heavy area of perfumery. It's a light citrusy fragrances that almost everyone enjoys. But of course, maybe I think now it's a good time to hand around the second fragrance I brought. Of course, we also work on new projects, and the project very close to my heart I launched last week together with Nicola, who worked with me on it as the creative director of the collection, is our new Série Extrait de Cologne, which is a collection of 6 fragrances, and the number 1, which is called Bergamote Admirable, I brought it for you to smell it, to enjoy it. And with the collection, it was exactly the same. We revisited the past, so we went back to the ingredients of the original eau de cologne, to the places where it was, where we were sourcing the ingredients from since 300 years, which is Calabria, which is Sicily, but also places like Versailles, where the eau de cologne was worn and enjoyed. So we revisited the ingredients as well as the places, as well as the figures who has worn it, to create fragrances that are built to of course, be enjoyed by the modern consumer and who will be there for the next 300 years. And the one you are smelling right now, to give a little more detailed explanation, it's called Bergamote Admirable. Johann Maria Farina, 300 years ago, he was the first one who introduced bergamot into modern perfumery. And when you smell it, you may see something sweet. And this is because for me, the bergamot always was something sweet, because when I was a child and we were going to Calabria in winter time, that's when the fruit is harvested, it is part of Calabrian patisserie. So to me, the connection when I went to perfumery school then, the first thing I said, oh, it's like a Christmas cookie, and people were looking at me like, this is a bergamot oil. How can you say that? And exactly this is the experience we wanted to give to the customer when they smell this fragrance, because it's a beautiful part of the culture of Calabria, where all the world is sourcing their bergamot from, and we thought it's very important to showcase, even though it's quite drastic for the Eau de Cologne brand to take their most treasured ingredient and give it a gourmand twist, because this is what we don't like normally, the gourmand, but that's what we are doing. And another project I've been working on also to attract more younger Gen Z customers, it's the Farina Atelier Eau de Cologne, where I was also working with Nicola, but more on his educational part, where we open the doors of modern perfumery to the public, so people can visit Farina House, the place where the original Eau de Cologne was born, and on base of that create their very own Eau de Cologne in our Atelier Eau de Cologne. And this is another example. I mean, fragrance classes nowadays, they pop up everywhere. It's nothing entirely new, but the reason why we launched it last year, we didn't even advertise it. It's fully booked 7 days a week. It's because people, they trust in the brand, because we were doing this exactly at that place, the same family, for the last 300 years. That's why it is quite easy for us to make the customer believe and to show them that they can trust us and that they will go home with a fragrance they can enjoy, actually. And yeah, that's why it is a big pleasure to work on this brand.
And I think you told us that recently there was a birthday party.
Yes, exactly. So also there we had a birthday party of an 18-year-old boy who celebrated with 12 boys his birthday at a perfume class. I mean, this would have not happened 10 years ago, not at all. And we see young people coming, really different styles, and people getting so excited. And this is also something to me truly beautiful, because it connects all nationalities, genders, ages. You have like a 60-year-old lady sitting there next to an 18-year-old boy. They're enjoying exactly the same experience, and they open up, they connect to each other, they connect to the craft. So it's a beautiful, beautiful experience.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next brand, I just want to bring Nicola in for a moment to tell us a little bit about first how you and Louise met, and then if you would share your experience on working with heritage brands and how you interpret them for the modern day?
So what I love about the experience with Louise is that it's all been very organic and natural. So I actually had the pleasure of meeting Louise's father at Florist, in the Florist Perfumery, where I've spent the best part of the last decade in London. As what's extraordinary is that Florist family and Farina family have known each other for centuries. In fact, what Louise hasn't mentioned is that they have a 300-meter-long archive in Germany. So Farina has access to the most tremendous, veritable heritage. And we have found letters between the Florist family and the Farina family dating back to the 1800s, where they would write each other in French, because of course French was the language spoken by then by the society. So it was all very organic, the way we met. And a few years later, I was given a presentation at ISIPCA, the Perfumery Masters. I was talking about heritage brands, so my specialism. And of course, I mentioned Giovanni Maria Farina. And then this young lady said to me, "Hello, I'm Farina." So that was quite incredible. And I didn't even I hadn't received the student list, so I had no idea who was going to be in the classroom. And it all just happened very organically. They invited me to visit them in Cologne. And I think what I love personally now, it's been more than a decade spending my time on heritage brands, is that authenticity. So we talked a lot with Arnaud about this word positive nostalgia, which personally I love, because this is what the customer feels, but this is also, I guess, what helps this brand to tap into a new territory. As in the past, when I first started working with heritage brands, their biggest problem was that they were perceived as stuffy or dusty, like old, vintage, in a negative way. And when I started doing heritage perfumery 12 years ago, clients were only 40 plus.
40 plus.
And now I have 18-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 9-year-olds sometimes. And they all have the greatest affinity in relating to the past. As Louise says, it's maybe something they can feel they can trust in a very positive way, and where they can find themselves. I think there is an element of reassurance in embracing this world. This universe has been there for some time. And in terms of how we do it, I guess it's just, again, authenticity, staying true to who you are. I love the fact that Louise and I, about 1 year ago, we found a very big buyer who told her, just scrap all your heritage, call it your name, make an oud. And she was like, no, this is exactly not what I'm going to do, because I'm here to preserve my heritage for the generations to come. So like with what she has just explained to you, I think it's just about elevating what has always been there. So on one side you have the product has been the same for 300 years, Eau de Cologne. So then Extrait de Cologne collection allows to reinterpret that, but still being true to the original. Alongside, you have the experience, the perfume museum that they have in how many people a year? 20,000? 30,000 people visit the perfume museum in Cologne. So how do you elevate that experience with the Atelier Eau de Cologne? So it's nothing new, really, but it's, I guess, in a modern way, staying true to that heritage.
Adapting with the times, somewhat, yeah. Great. Okay, well, I think we're ready to pass the clicker to Amélie.
So hello, everyone. So as you introduced me, thank you very much. So I'm Amélie. I relaunched d'Orsay in 2019. And I fell in love with d'Orsay actually 10 years ago. It's amazing because this brand is almost 200 years old, but the foundation of the brand is still very contemporary, and that's why it was like love at first sight with this brand. And this is a true story. In 1830, Alfred d'Orsay met Marguerite de Blessington, And they fell madly, deeply in love. And that's a true story. We do have books and writings about it. And out of love for her, he created a perfume that they could both wear because they couldn't stand not being together. So that's how the first couple fragrance was created. And this story took place 200 years ago, but it's more than ever. You know, it's like, it's still alive, and it's still what we are all feeling. It's universal, whatever your age. You can come from any countries. It's this love and passion is something that speaks to everyone. So when we launched the brand, it took us 4 years to relaunch it. We work on the archives, like Louise, because you have to be true to yourself, and you have to be up to this heritage. So we have to step up our own game to make it work. So as you can maybe see, the Dorsey logo is inspired from the one that were on the advertising of the 1950s. The shape of our bottle is inspired by a Lalique one, and the same for the candles. So yeah, a little bit of dates. Yeah, we're going to spend like 5 hours on it. No, don't worry. No, it was just some days just to say that this brand had up and downs, and but what's amazing is that it has always been alive. So what we wanted is to speak, of course, to the customers of today. We are a heritage brand. We want to be timeless. My biggest dream is that it will still be alive in 200 years. But still, of course, we have to follow in a way the trends and to follow, of course, the Gen Z. Gen Z is coming to us, but we are also going to the Gen Z, of course. But we have to be true to ourselves, and we have to make new interpretation, or at least our own interpretation of the trends that are in the market. So it's a hazard maybe, but not totally a hazard. That we are working on the milk notes, or strawberry notes, or peach notes. Today we are presenting two perfumes, two extraits de parfum. When we launched the brand, we wanted to explore different states of love. So what we do with the eau de parfum, but we also wanted to explore love potion. So as you can see, we are always talking about passion. So the black bottles for Dorsey are the extraits de parfum. And today we are going to smell 2 of them that are definitely into the theme of the Gen Z, we think. So I don't know which one you have.
The first one.
The first one
is Candy.
So Candy Rush. And we have the chance to have the perfumer of Candy Rush here, Patrice Revillard. And so for Candy Rush, it's an exclusivity for Campo Matteo 70, our Italian retailer. And we wanted to explore a gourmand. We didn't have so much gourmand into our range, but we wanted this gourmand to be very elegant, to be an overdose, very sexy, but not like overwhelming or anything. So we asked Patrice, when we give the brief, that we wanted to explore our own childhood, but with a point of view of a grown-up. So I think you can smell the neroli, the orange blossom, and there is a special secret accord of marshmallow. So this is definitely from our childhood. And a lot of musk, so and benjoin also. So I think it does ring a bell to you. It does link to your childhood, but you are definitely totally into the seduction with this one. You can always talk. Huh? At any time you can stop and say no, I don't agree, or yes, I do agree. Anything else you want to say, Patrice, about this? No, it's okay. I was fine. Thank you. And the other perfume, I think you have it too, or maybe you're going to have it. It's called Holy Berry. So hollyberry, as we said earlier, we work on this strawberry, but once again, we are a heritage brand. We want to go into the seduction, but we still want to have this kind of, I wouldn't say like a French way of doing it. So this hollyberry, it's an accord of strawberry milk. So once again, very, very linked to our childhood. But there is a duality with a white wood. So it was a creation of the perfumer. The perfumer is Tanguy Guéné, a young perfumer. This white wood is a creation that we kept the wood itself, but we took away all the animalic smells that you can find. So it's like a really good balance between a very deep, dark wood mixed with a strawberry milk accord. So all this goes into what you said earlier. And I love when you say positive nostalgia, because we don't want to be nostalgic. We don't want to be depressed. We just want to live, to love, and what we really want to do every day with our brand is, even if we are a heritage one, we want to bring joy and passion into people's life. We want to give them a way to create their own and shape their own personality. And it's amazing because today generally people have many perfumes, and it's quite new that you are changing perfumes in the same day, whatever you age.
Yeah. I remember you told us when we had our chats that you found that your consumer in particular is very savvy about the ingredient, that they ask about the ingredient and they ask about
a Genz is so expert.
They want to know who's the perfumer. They really are into this, which the older generations, because I think that information was never shared, say 20, 30, 40 years ago, that they're not, they don't have the habit of asking. But now you see that people are really paying attention to this and looking for something from perfumer X.
Yeah, definitely. They are all like really expert of perfumes. And when we do masterclass, we really have to go deep inside the ingredients, where they come from, what was the extraction. So, yeah, it's you address your customers in a very different way. Still, I prefer to talk about feelings and what it makes you feel like, or but you know, Chloe, who works with me, she always say, choosing a perfume in the morning is like asking yourself who you want to spend the day with. And I think it's so true, but still, the Gen Z is very expert, and they love to know all the ingredients and every details of anything. But I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Because it's a passion that can be, it's a kind of, I would say, a kind of affordable passion. Because you can find any prices in perfumery. And I think this is an amazing way to keep people alive and happy in our world today.
Yeah. I think it was last week. I'm a little confused because last week I was both in Paris and Cologne and Milan. But I think it was last week that I met with Chloe and I went to the boutique. And what was really interesting that she explained to me was how you've incorporated so many of the elements of the story into the boutique. So they were just mentioning the idea of the love letters that went back and forth between Alfred and Marguerite. So in the shop, you have this feeling that you're in an old-style post office, or it says guichet, which in French that means like the ticket window where you would buy your stamps. So you really are transported into this feeling of being in a different age, and yet it's extremely modern. So you have this kind of cohabitation of the old and the new coming together in this beautiful place with the fragrances, and then you have the classes that people can take. So I think it's interesting that we have two brands that have this heritage and they have this experience within the boutique that is necessary to really allow the consumer to be in this world. So bravo to both of you for successfully building that into your shops, and then certainly with Farina, it's the original building, so or it's the original. You have the office of Jean-Marie Farina, and you have the museum. So this is incredible. I highly recommend anyone to go to both places because you would have a fabulous experience. I think we have maybe one more slide, and then we can pass on to questions.
Yes, and I think, you know, when you are listening all these speeches, I think what is super important is to now realize that vintage is not dusty, it's trendy. But to make it very trendy, but to make it, in fact, trendy, you have to really respect where you are coming from, you know, and modernize it. So, because we know that authenticity for this generation is perhaps one of the key words, and they feel and they know and they decrypt, you know, the marketing, blah, blah, as we say. So building on the past to propose a new future is something absolutely crucial. Let them experience the past also in the present day. So the experimentation for this generation, particularly in the point of sales, are absolutely crucial. We know that because for this generation, they don't want brands that are purely transactional. They want brands that are bringing them emotions. You know, they want brands that are inviting them in their community so that they feel part of the community of the brands and they understand the brand DNA. And from an olfactive point of view, it's also very interesting because sometimes, you know, you can say, oh, but now the trend is only about gourmand, it's only about wood, it's only about vanilla. But because the trend is there, you can find other paths to seduce the generation. And we ran some tests when we were asking Genz to smell some vintage fragrances in blind, so they didn't know, you know, what they were smelling. And in fact, we discovered that some forgotten olfactive families or some forgotten, I would say, olfactive twist can be super new and futuristic for this generation because now they are so used to gourmand and woods that they sometimes rediscover things. And soft, fresh florals, delicate rosy violet, or opulent white flowers may be the new future olfaction. So let's see next sense in like 2-3 years. Perhaps it will not smell the same out there, you know. But we think it's interesting because we always say that fragrance is a tool for emotional connection. So rediscovering also these olfactive families and this olfactive interpretation can be a way, if you are reinterpreting them with relevance, to really, in fact, give to this generation joy and bring them newness while building on the past and the truth and some solid foundations. Thank you.
Great. Okay, I know that we're over time, but I think we probably have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions max, if anyone has any questions in the audience. I see one here in front.
I don't know who to ask this question. Could be Arnaud, that maybe you can give me more, maybe a sociologist point of view, or maybe to Louise, because you have experienced time with teenagers that like this vintage thing. But I'm wondering if they are, because they didn't live this history, you know, they didn't live in those time. So do you think they are in love with this vintage because of the history or because of the mythology, the fantasy they create around these old epochs? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Is the storytelling, is the fantasy they think it is, or they study the story, they know, or they are fascinated with that?
So I will answer, and then please do it also, Louise. At least from, I would say, sociological point of view, what we know is that, and this is what the reason why we were calling it anemoia, it's really the fact that they are dreaming about this period, because for them, there were periods where it was not digital, it was really about living a more peaceful life, even if we know it's not the truth, but because, go back to some of the 300 or 400 years, it was not so easy to live, depending on your social class and all that, but they are dreaming and they are fantasizing this type of, period of time. Look at Bridgeton, how popular it became with the Gen Z, because they rediscovered doing tea parties in English way, and for them it's just the idea of time traveling into a dream of the past. Then when it's come to perfumery and we're heritage brand, they are able to study.
I totally agree. So from what we experience, I see the same, and I think it's you need the historical evidence to give them the opportunity to dream, because it's what Amélie mentioned, they want to know everything. And everyone can say, I do a fragrance that smells like Calabrian sea. But if it's a brand who has not been in Calabria and they're not sourcing directly from the people who actually pick the fruits, it's not that trustworthy for them. So I think you need both. You need accuracy, and that's why we are also always stressing the point that we have the documents. I can prove that Napoleon used our fragrance, and that's when then people, they believe you and they can follow their dream, because there's so much trust. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, maybe one more question if there's anyone in the room. I think I see someone in the back.
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation. First of all, it was very inspiring and interesting. My question is, as a new perfumer just starting my line like this or next year, I don't want to follow like the big trends and like the new thing. I want to create something that gives that heritage feel, but I'm a new perfume line. So how would you go about to create that heritage feel to a new line?
Thank you. But this is just my point of view, and I understand what you mean. How can, but for us, as we said, we do have the evidence that we had this fragrance for over a century, like Tilleul, Hidden Flower, has been sold by Dorsey for 100 years. So it's like reliable and verified information. But does that matter? I think I do understand your point of view and what I can imagine when you want the feeling that you want to create, even if you are a new perfumer launching a new brand, wanting to have this old style feeling perfumes.
Elegance.
That's it, right?
Elegance, yeah.
Yeah, but as long as you are telling the truth, I think you can do whatever you want. As long as you are saying, okay, I want to work on this positive nostalgia. I love this old fragrance. What is my new interpretation of what it was before? Okay, and as long as it is true, and you are not lying to anyone, especially to yourself, I really think that there is, I don't see any, how do you say in French, in English? Breaks or limits or boundaries.
If I can add a comment, and I think you can, I mean, there are many heritage brands. To me, it's the different. You can do a heritage brand in terms of it looks old, yeah, which is perfectly working at the moment, so people love it, even though it's new brands. Or you can say you're going to tell a story, so maybe there's something in your life or a place or a certain history you would like to connect your fragrances with, which you can connect them to the past without having a company that lasts back until then. So, for example, when you really go into deep research of a culture or a tradition, you are able to connect it to something that makes it authentic. Yeah, I think that's the key.
If I can add just a last word on that, I think that creating timelessness is the goal for everyone, you know. So, however, it's very difficult because sometimes the creators, they don't even know themselves that their fragrance will last that long, you know. So, as you were all saying, I think the best thing is that you refer to some ingredients that are true, that are truly belonging to the history of perfumery, and you know why, you understand why, and then you twist them with your own personality so that you are authentic, timeless, and at the same time a bit modern. You know, it's the reason why it's always interesting. For example, we worked on a kefi that is perhaps one of the oldest fragrances recipes that was discovered, you know, from the old Egyptian story, and then it was reinterpreted. So how you can also, if vintage is really your goal, looking back at the powdery notes, you know, that were so on trend, the violet notes, looking at, you know, the citrus, because they are at the origin of perfumery, the aromatic, you know, for example, rosemary has been a bit forgotten, so why not to reinterpret rosemary? So look at the ingredients that you love and make them yours first. And then, of course, if you want, because, you know, you have to meet your public, we don't say that you have to follow the trends, but adding a little bit of touch at the beginning to open this kind of timelessness, to seduce the current public, is also perhaps the best way to have the right encounter with your customers.
Awesome. Thank you very much, all.
Okay.
Can I just add quickly something, following up on what Arnaud was saying, which I think for me at least was an incredibly revealing experience, the concept of offline. So we are constantly asked whether the experience are offline, and people seek for that specifically. So it feels like the online has somehow divorced the presence of the person in space. And I think maybe this is what people also associate so much now about timelessness, the fact of being able to be fully immersed in the present moment.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the show. If you have any other questions, I'll be out in the hallway. But thank you for coming, and go smell everything that you can and enjoy the show. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.